DWIZ, programang sasagutin ang iba't ibang isyu at mga balita. Karambola sa DWIZ. Tatalakayin, hihimayin at pagtatalunan ang iba't ibang mga isyu. Karambola sa DWIZ, programang pwede kang mag-usa. Pero for now, pwede ka rin mas-crash. At ngayon, narito na ang inyong mga karambulista at ang programang Karambola sa DWIZ.
Magandang umaga. Pakitest na lang if I still have an audio. Magandang umaga. Ako po si Trixie Cruz Angeles. Ito po ang Karambola. Pasensya na po. Medyo nahuli tayo ngayong araw na ito. It's because we're supposed to be on vacation. I just need some feedback on the audio. And... Alright. Okay, I have audio. Magandang umaga. I still can't see your comments. Medyo mabagal din ng konting internet dito. But it's good to be joining everybody again this post-Christmas holidays before the New Year. So, as we approach the New Year, as we all know, magkakaroon na naman tayo ng set of New Year's resolutions. But because this is political commentary, we start to wonder, ano po ba ang mga New Year's resolutions ng mga politiko natin, particularly if for those who are running for office. In the meantime, DWIC text line 0998-376-6768. We're also on Facebook Live and YouTube live streaming. Huwag pong kakalimutan mag-like, share, follow, and subscribe. We're on DWIC 882 AM. It's 4 days before New Year 2022. Before the New Year 2022. We're also coming very close to the start of the official campaign season. Of course, in January or early February is the start of the national campaign, but the gun ban begins on January 9th. So, we have to be very, very careful para dun sa ating mga kandidato. Huwag kakalimutan that we have a gun ban starting January 9th. Ano po yung purpose nitong gun ban na ito? Well, it's supposed to keep down election violence or election-related violence. And to be fair, the number of casualties due to election-related violence has been diminishing over the years. So it's either becoming more civilized or we're getting to enforce our laws all, much better than we have ever done in history. Now, in the meantime, we're also counting down the last remaining months and weeks of the Duterte administration. At dahan-dahan na rin po tayo nakakakita ng mga parang informal testimonials on social media all over the country, as well as the world. Marami naman tayong and in relation to that, there is of course, the campaign rhetoric, which is actually nice. For the first time, what we're seeing in the Duterte administration is a slightly improved communication strategy. Why? Because, well, primarily, hindi kasi what do you call this? There's no more reason. Kumbaga, yung mga kalaban ng presidente are slowly starting to realize that, well, the president is not running. He's not the one where, kumbaga, although the candidates understand that they are up against the record of the president, there is no official candidate. So, dahil wala tayong official candidate, going up against the president and talking about his track record and all that doesn't seem to be working for anybody. But let's have a look also at what's going on. The Manila Bulletin has started a survey that ends in December 30. Ewan ko kung nakita po ninyo yan. And it is an online survey. Dito sa online survey na yan, like most surveys, it started out with BBM coming in very, very strong. Pero sometime, I don't know, the last night or the other, early yesterday, parang nasa 60+% na sila dito, pero and BBM has been lagging behind at something like less than 40%. So it makes you wonder, di ba? Mag-iisip ka talaga, what's going on? Well, number one, we all know that until BBM came along and traditional media concurred, before nobody really trusts online surveys. because they're easily, how do you call this? Well, not exactly manipulated, but yes, they can actually be manipulated pagka it's on a website that is easily seen by yung mga followers of a particular candidate, pwede nilang dumugin yon, even if you can just vote one time. So halimbawa, website ng Luminous, which is being throttled occasionally by Facebook, if I set up a survey, then of course, naturally and necessarily, the candidates for which there has been preferences in our page will be the forerunners. Kung kunwari lang, hindi totoo, kunwari lang na Ping Lacson kami, then the followers of Ping Lacson will come in and vote, in numbers. You can even create fake accounts. Who's going to check, diba? And it will show him in the lead, which is why online surveys, are rarely trusted. Now, there's some that have better methodology, such as in sa Publicos Asia. They do their own statistical research and so on. And it's quite, how do you call this? Reliable and credible. Pero you just post a survey online, which is something any person with a Facebook account can do, well, that's not necessarily credible. However, it's not above other candidates. Kumbaga, yung mga kandidato, hindi naman sila above doing something like that, diba? Doing something like, uy, may pa-survey si ganito, or round up the troops, everybody vote, ganito. So, general rule, these surveys, particularly the ones that you can conduct very easily on Facebook, are not exactly reliable. But yung mga kalaban ng leading candidates will, of course, take advantage of the situation, because anything can be used to present a good face, kumbaga. Parang pinalalabas ngayon na si Leni Robredo parang super-duper lakas suddenly. All of a sudden, she developed a following. Ngayon, tatandaan po natin because of what happened in 2016 at dun sa 5 years that followed after that. Dahil dun sa mga Senate hearings at dun sa ebidensya na nailantad sa publiko kahit hindi pa ito naitanggap dun sa hukuman, kahit hindi ito tinanggap sa hukuman, ay narinig at nakita ng taong bayan. And therefore, this affected the credibility of the Vice President in the 5 years that she has been sitting in office. And this continues to haunt her. Baga, tuloy-tuloy pa rin to. Nobody woke up suddenly to say na, oo, nanalo talaga si Leni Robredo. No. A lot of people understand that given the evidence that was presented dun sa Senado, well, hindi naman Senado, and of course, meron din palang House hearing noon. Then we also understand that they're here. The elections for Leni Robredo is, they have something to prove. It is essential for them na to win, of course. But if they cannot win, they have to put in a good showing. They have to be able to show na merong solid base ang Vice President, even if it is not evident in the surveys. Uy, babati lang muna ako. Magandang umaga bago tayo mag-break, ha? Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat, lalo-lalo na dun sa mga naka-monitor sa atin on our YouTube channel. Sir Luvi Noliagam, John Brian Manterolas, Corazon Navarro, Shamila Biton, Esther Tadeo, Baba D, Lorena Maturan, Joy, Bobby Fajardo, Dick Park. What's the name? Kavlog with JAT, Kavlog, with JAT, LMX, Rowena Itani, Mel Mendoza, Marcos of T 2000. Ma'am Jennifer Ichikawa, magandang umaga, Ma'am Jen. Jean J 1210. Ayun, magandang umaga. Dito din pala si Pesto, si Clarence, si J.M. Marlon, Rico Lantayan, Aldrin M. Okay, yung mga those who sign in their names with how do you call this? non-Greco-Roman lettering. Hindi ko mabasa. Vancouver Gem, Joey Tan, Carlex Crespo, Alfonso Magpayo, and Wild Orchids. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Hindi pa po ako nakaka-share sa ating Facebook. So, if you could give me a hand here, guys, why don't you like and share. So, lang muna tayo for a while. Oops. Okay. So, I understand na dadating din pala si Boss John. At in the meantime, the time is now 8:33 ng umaga. Magbabalik ang Karambola after the break.
Balikan natin ang ating mga karambulista at ang programa Karambola sa DWIZ.
Nagbabalik ang Karambola. Andito pa rin ako pero via Zoom. At padating po, I understand si Boss Jonathan de la Cruz. In the meantime, para dun sa ating mga sumusubaybay sa ating Facebook page and YouTube live streaming, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Don't also forget to follow and subscribe to our Facebook page, Luminous by Trixie Cruz Angeles and Ahmed Paglinawan. Don't forget to subscribe also. We have the same YouTube channel. Magandang umaga. Pasensya na po. Para dun sa mga nagsasabing kanina pa ako nag-antay dito. Pasensya na po. Normally kasi on Christmas, we have 1 week off ang Karambola. Naalangan ng Pasko, it fell on a weekend. So medyo rin kami kung kailan kami mag-1 week break. So we're officially on break, pero kami ni Boss Janet and sometimes si Boss Conrad, and we normally cannot resist pag nakikita na na parang naboblanko yung time slot ng Karambola. So, magandang umaga. Uy, andito si Ma'am Pinay Paparazzi. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. And we're checking out your comments on our Facebook page. Hindi ko pa kayo nakikita sa ating Facebook. Panapipin actually yung Yun. Magandang umaga kay Herminio Gabriel Mendiola, Teresita Padasas, Ozilia Batong Arcaina, Ma'am Daisy Cotto. Magandang umaga po sa inyo. Huwag kakalimutan dun sa ating Facebook page. Don't forget to like and share. So, the other thing that I wanted to know is, how was your Christmas, everybody? There's a slight increase dito sa ating cases on COVID, especially dito sa Metro Manila. Pero hindi pa daw maliwanag, sinisiyasat pa po ng ating mga eksperto, si DOH, kung ano yung cause ng paglobo nito. Of course, it might seem obvious para sa karamihan sa atin na maraming nakikisabay, kumbaga it's not a surprise na lumulobo during this time of the year. There are a lot of family reunions, bumaba yung risk level natin, people were at the malls and so on. So, medyo, kumbaga, observable fact yung pag-ikot ng mga tao. Pero at the same time, since a lot of people have become vaccinated, the numbers haven't increased that much. Napilitan po ang IATF na babaan taasan uli yung antas ng grado natin dito sa ng alert level natin dito sa NCR from very low risk to low risk dahil nga dito sa apparent pag-increase, a small spike in the number of cases dito. May nabalitaan din na may pang-apat na nadiskubre na Omicron variety na nakapasok dito from a person who had ridden a PAL flight, a woman. She has not been identified, nor has the origin of her flight yet been identified. Identifying flight number, so it's a small matter of tracing it. Pero hindi pa po publiko masyado because she has been asymptomatic and has been immediately quarantined. Gayunpaman, Omicron remains to be a threat even as sa ngayon ay sinisiyasat pa o pinag-aaralan pa kung ano yung tunay na ng epekto nito. In countries where there have been huge numbers of the Omicron variety, the one thing is for certain, lubos na nakakahawa po ito. So, mag-iingat pa rin po tayo kahit fully vaccinated. Sinabi na rin ng IATF that yung booster shots can be given to people who have gotten their second shot at at least 3 months ago. Dati kasi sinasabi 6 months post-second dose. Pwede na po ngayon yung mga magkuha ng booster shots, those who have gotten their shots as late as September, pwede na po magpaturok ng booster shot. Magandang umaga, Ma'am Risa Abella, Ma'am Annie Destrizas Bernardo, Ma'am Lori Prebe, magandang umaga po sa inyo. It seems parang medyo chill na chill tayo ngayong araw na ito. I'm looking to see kung merong mga how do you call this, issues that we absolutely have to discuss, pero wala pa ako nakikita kasi sa inyo na queries that have been kumbaga foremost on your mind. So dun sa naghahanap sa kay Yoshi, yes, he's here. Hindi lang siya nasa stress. Kahapon kasi nag-i-insist siya na batiin ko siya. And what happens here, para dun sa mga medyo bago dito, para dun sa hindi pa nakikinig sa mga live natin dito sa Luminous, my dogs have a tendency to remind me that I have been on the computer for too long. So pagka tumitig-itig na ng lampas 1 hour, itong si Yoshi, kinakalabit na ako. Or sometimes tatahulan na ako ni Harry. So, this early, hihingi ako ng pasensya pag bigla akong kinalabit ng mga dogs. Sabi ni Ma'am Pinay, nabati ako. Pasensya na po. After a few days of rubbing elbows with yellow-tired friends and relatives, I need to reconnect with my sensei. Bakit, well, for those of us who have relatives and friends not of the same political persuasion, ika nga nila, para in the vernacular, hindi ka baro sa politika, I sympathize with you. We have to be nice. But as much as possible, we need to show people, remember that it's campaign season, at least the informal campaign season has begun over a year ago pa. For me, at least nakikita ko yan na halos 1 taon na tayong nasa informal campaign season. The formal campaign season doesn't begin until about February. So, we have to understand na kung meron talaga tayong napupusuan na kandidato, remember that in a sense, we represent them. And you should always be in campaign mode, meaning you strive to get votes. You don't strive to make sure that your candidate loses them, diba? And in part, our behavior will inform the other, the people who are soft on their candidates pa, yung hindi pa ganun katibim paninindigan para sa kandidato nila, they can still be persuaded, or at the very least, they can be persuaded to be accepting if, for instance, yung candidate natin ang manalo, the others will be persuaded that we're not going to be complete a-holes to them, for lack of a better word. Tinatanong ni Ma'am Granny Padilla, what's new po kay BBM at Sarah? Aside from the fact that they're in the lead, merong Marcos Sara Duterte Alliance national headquarters that was inaugurated the other day or yesterday. Masada ang kanyang tawag, and so congratulate them. The national headquarters is located in Davao City. So, may nagtatanong, I wish na ma-overcome na natin itong pandemya to. Sabi ni Ma'am Mel Mendoza, I miss the normal life na. I think that early on in the pandemic, we were already informed that this is the normal life. It's going to be normal for now. Diba? Kumbaga, that's why we were saying the new normal. So, if for those of us who have nostalgia for the pre-COVID days, I think it might be a while. So if you're longing for a certain period for a while and you're going to have difficulty adjusting to the new normal, so I think it's best for us to understand that for a while we're going to be wearing face masks. Even when we discover a cure for this and the science is heading in that direction, hindi lang po vaccines ang tinitignan ng mga dalubhasa ngayon, tinitignan na po nila yung possibility of a cure, and it is by oral intake. The science is heading in that direction. Wala pa po masyadong mga peer reviews on the new researches, pero we're waiting for that. Ito. Bakit niyo ako pinapadala ng kopya ng umangat na si BBM. Sabi ni Josh Amato, MD, doctor. Should I be calling you Dr. Josh? 14 minutes ago that BBM is now pala at 59%. Uy, maraming salamat. Maraming salamat. And I suppose you've all read the President's statement na huwag naman kayong bumoto ng mga tao. He was talking to the victims. Huwag naman po kayong bumoto ng mga tao na bumisita lang sa inyo para gawing backdrop para sa picture taking ninyo, no? And we all know what that's about. So, sabi ni Ma'am Pinay, ayaw ka ng discussion kasi pandemic na nga, nadi-divide dahil lang sa politics. Kaya namimiss ko mga tao dito sa chat. Yes, okay. Remember the saying, there is that, well, it's not really a saying because there's very few of us who know it. If you want to unite the country, you declare war. That's a rule in international relations, actually, or an observation. And if you want to divide the country, you call for an elections. So we have to also be very careful, to be very mindful that those who are for a particular candidate, kailangan hang together. Now, if your candidate has an early lead, or our candidate has an early lead, then the order of the day, kumbaga, if you want your candidate to win, is to make sure you don't lose the people who are already with you. And our attitudes and the way we communicate with other people will inform them of what we're going to be like after he wins, diba? So, listen to the candidate. This is something that I cannot emphasize enough. For those of us who want our candidate to win, it's very important to see the communications directions that our candidates have been going. So if you will listen to BBM, he has, hindi siya patola. Kumbaga, halimbawa, kahit nung kinikriticize siya ni Presidente, ano yung sagot niya? Ang sagot niya is, gayon pa man, mataas pa rin ang respeto namin sa Presidente. At he reiterates his call and his stand na may continuity dapat dun sa magandang na umpisahan ng Duterte administration. I hope that we have all been listening, but it will also indicate the kind of leadership that he's going to show for us. So we have to listen and show that we are trusting of his leadership. So when he says that this is going to be unification, this is going to be something that the time for bashing and tearing down things is passing. Of course, we will do that for necessary incidents, diba? But meron para mga political enemies and all that. But the message is clear from both Inday Sara and from BPM that they are going for unification. They are going, that's why, kasi ang laki ng following nila, the ratings, kumbaga. Yung surveys have been indicative that this is going to be a majority team, a majority president and vice president. Ibig sabihin, you're not going to win by a plurality, yung matatalong malang ibang mga kandidato. This is heading in the direction that this team is going to garner more than 50% of the vote. That's a majority president. And so the age where you have to, naalala nyo how social media became such a battleground is because there are so many people trying to take down Duterte. He had shown that he is capable of being this huge iconoclast. What is an iconoclast? From the word icon and class, icon, God, class, to destroy. He is a God destroyer. But by God, when we say iconoclast, it means he is capable of tearing down long-held and cherished beliefs. Yung matagal na nating paniniwala. Yung paniniwala of the yellow hegemony na sinasabi nila, or yung hegemony of those represented by ABS-CBN, Duterte has shown that he's capable of tearing it down and building something new. And ang messaging na nakikita ko from listening to our candidates is this: the period for that, this president Duterte has paved the way for a unification to begin, for national healing to begin, for us to have a truly democratic society. We will allow for multiplicity of opinions, but remember that most people will be rallying behind a single leadership team. And that's how the communications has been in general, coming from the uni team. They have talked softly, they have talked gently, because this is, it's no longer about warfare. Sa laki ng lead nila, they can now afford to say everybody's opinion is welcome. All political persuasions will be welcome, to participate in the marketplace of ideas. I'm looking at your comments. Carlex Crespo says, I believe PRRD will endorse PBM eventually. He doesn't want to do it this early. I think it's not even necessary anymore. Yung sinabi ng Pangulo is that he will be neutral, and I see no reason for him to change his mind on that one. Pero the fact that his daughter is running is endorsement enough. You don't need him to come out and say so. But just so, it's a reminder that he's still the president of this country and that he has to protect every single person, whether or not yung tao na yun ay kabaro niya o hindi. Ang problema po natin, sabi ni Chuper, ay ang COMELEC mismo. Silang nagbibilang, baka po ulitin yung ginawa nila noong 2016. Alright, yes, of course, this is always a concern. Alam ko na talaga nasa isip natin ang mga pangyayari ng 2016. But a huge lead like this allows us a small measure of comfort. It doesn't mean that we should be kampante or anything like that. Oh my gosh, I'm talking of like your favorite candidate. Hindi dapat tayo nakakampante dito. At the same time, hindi rin dapat tayo paulit-ulit na dadayain, because it convinces people that the system is not going to work anyway and it will keep people away from the polls. Hindi nyo ba nakikita yung mga komento, mayat maya sumusulpot, ba't pa ako boboto, dadayain lang naman yung kandidato. Ba't pa ako boboto, namimili lang naman ng COMELEC kung sino ang gusto nila. Okay, the rule of cheating or the observation that we have made in the cheating mechanism is that even with the capability, kahit kayang-kaya nilang palabasin na yung pinaka-minority ay actually nanalo, you can only do so much. And you can only do so much nang hindi nagkakagulo, di ba? Halimbawa, Leni Robredo may have won in the 2016 elections on the surface, but nobody actually believes that, or very few actually believe that. A large majority of people who have seen the evidence presented dun sa Senado also understand that this is not, kumbaga, panalo ka, sige, panalo ka, but credibility-wise, you're going to have a tough time. And a president without credibility or without a real mandate is a shaky presidency. Sabi ni Francis Cayetano, okay, I like this one. Ibalik daw ang public trust sa gobyerno, sabi ni Madam. Hello, nag-peak na ang ng 90% ang trust rating ni PRRD. That's an excellent observation, actually. But what they're trying to do is create scenarios or create a fake view of what is going on. Diba? A fake, this has been a standard LP formula for elections anyway and for governance, is to create a fear. ito, whether the fear has some semblance in reality or absolutely none, like in the current case na diktador and beltugo, things are so bad in this country, kailangan natin ng pagbabago. They create a fear and then say that they are the solution. Ganun yun. Ganyan parati sila. Hindi naman, kahit unnecessary yung fear, kahit wala naman basis yung fear, sasabihin nila sila yung solusyon. Eto, may problema tayo kahit walang problema, but the rhetoric will go in that direction. Eto, may problema tayo at kami lang ang pwedeng mag-solve ng problema na yan. Ayan na. Diyan na yung bulahan. Sabi ni Clarence, in my 30 years in this life, oh my gosh, you're so young. This is the only president where I saw true leadership. Yan. Sabi ni, ano ba yan? Ma'am Hazel Eyes, dapat matapos na yung practice na yan. And I reckon tayong taong bayan ang may power to do that. I'm not sure which practice, but if it's yung campaign strategy nila, well, all we have to do is show that, it doesn't work. We don't believe that you're the answer to anything. In fact, we're not even asking you a question. Wala tayong problema. Sabi ni Carla Express po, kailangan talaga matranslate yung survey results to actual votes para mahirapan silang dayaan si PPM in particular. Yes. So the observation in cheating is that you can only do so much. Even with even if you can do that with the ease of flicking a switch, which I don't think they're capable of doing that. It's not going to be easy to cheat in numbers that are really large, which is why it is important that not only consolidate the lead for the leading candidate, but to keep going at it. The problem with early successes is the tendency na makampante in tao. So I'm glad to see that the BBM team or the unit team and their campaign managers or strategists hindi po tumitigil. But they have always presented to us a calm and rational approach to elections. They can afford to be that. Yung iba, what they're doing is they will create problems. Yung kandidato na yan, ganito yan. Imagine what it will be like with him as a leader. Kami na lang iboto ninyo. Yun yung parating unspoken dyan. So, halimbawa, meron mga dyan, they want to look, halimbawa, to make it look like the last disaster had a disastrous response as well. Diba? Doon ako naiinis disaster na nga, pupolitikahin pa. People are suffering. And then you have people coming in, taking pictures, saying, sige, tutulong namin kayo. I'm just here to find out how you are. So ngayon na alam ko naghihirap kayo at gutom na gutom, walang tubig, walang bahay, walang kahit ano. Nakita ko na. Alam ko na yung problema. Babalik ako. Really? Hindi ka nakatulong. Sa gabal ka. We need to be able to constantly point it out without necessarily being disagreeable anymore. We can afford to ignore yung galit ng kabilang partner kasi nga we really just want to avoid the toxicity and just make sure that we consolidate this amazing lead that is showing up in all of the surveys. Sabi ni Teddy Gaming, yung mga nagpapapicture kay nanay kasama yung motor niya. Sabi ni Granny Padilla, I can't wait to see BBM go back where he belongs. Para namang I don't want him to go back where he belongs. I want him to lead. Because when he was a resident of Malacanang, he was there as his father's son. But we want to see him lead. So merong mga nagtatanong bakit BBM ka? Sabi ko, bakit hindi? I think that the answer to that question is because, number one, the one of the reasons why unang pinakilala sa akin in particular, the first time that I met BBM and Senator Amy was in DWIZ. And I met them as a host. Para sa akin, it was the first time to see them up close and personal. For the first time, like ever. I'd seen their parents before, and I'd seen them in person, but never the siblings. I'd seen their sister because she's heavily into culture and arts. But the good thing was the timing in meeting them. By the time that I had met them, it was already the Duterte administration. At marami nang nabasag na, kumbaga, preconceptions and misconceptions yung presidente na ito. In doing so, by the time that I had met PPM and Amy, medyo bumukas na yung isip ko as against the how do you call this? The standard attitude towards them that na nakagisna namin during the early years. Now, when we were younger, there's virtually only one political opinion, and that could be heard, and that opinion was against the Marcoses. They were demonized so much. But by the time that Duterte had come along, he had opened up minds and blasted preconceptions. That's why he's an iconoclast. Blasted preconceptions to the point that I was more than willing to, okay, sige, let's see what's going on here. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that both are, how do you call this? I don't like to use the term well-bred kasi parang reminds me of other things. But they seem to be well brought up. They are educated, intelligent, even funny, hugely witty, and it made for pleasant surprises for me. So after that, it always became a pleasure, kumbaga, asking them questions, getting answers, getting kwento out of them. Like, it doesn't really take much, for instance, to get kwento out of Amy Marcos. But with BBM, you have to be, the nice thing is to be asking questions. He gives not safe answers but nuanced answers. Meaning maraming layers yung mga sagot niya. And this is something that I really would like to see in the next administration. Duterte paved the way. Duterte was the destroyer, and then he cleared the path. And now it's time for us also to become more nuanced. Dati our enemies, it was black and white, because that's kumbaga parang giyera kasi yung panahon ni Duterte. It was war with those who were out of power for the first time in 30 years. There are people there who are thinking, well, I want to get rid of this. Hindi pwedeng bumalik tayo sa hindi pwedeng matanggal yung poder namin, yung mga privileges namin, yung place namin in society. Hindi pwede yun. And so they fought very hard, and Duterte also fought back quite a lot. It wasn't perfect, but he did pave the way. And so now, it's more, I see that tataas na rin yung antas ng mga diskusyon. And tataas na rin yung antas ng appreciation natin ng gobyerno and governance and even the justice system. Diba? Makikita na natin that we are progressing. So because there is a Duterte, there is a BBM who can come along and be a far more nuanced, far more, taking us that step further. So para sa akin, there's no other candidate except the candidate who will assure the continuity of the good things and then take us further. Sabi ni Don Pelonio dito sa ating Facebook page, sawan ng karamihan sa taong bayan sa mga black propaganda ng mga kalaban ni BBM sa tagal ng pagdito nila sa loob ng 35 years na wala naman na idagdag ng mga bagong proyekto, sa halip mga proyekto pa rin na tinatawag nilang diktador, etc. Teka, sorry Sir Don medyo mabagal yung internet natin dito on this end. Hindi naman pala sila mga magnanakaw, hakam na wala silang nagawa sa mahabang panahon ng kanilang panunungkulan. I like how you phrase things, sir. But I agree. Kumbaga, maraming nagtataka na pagkatapos ng halos 35 years of propaganda, or more actually, kasi nag-umpisa yan during the Marcos years pa lang, sa tinagal-tagal ng paulit-ulit na sinasabi sa atin na mga demonyo itong mga to, mga they're ultra bad people, they're the villains of the universe, hindi kumapit. Well, of course, we agree with Professor Alex Magno when he says that a vote for BBM or for the Uni Team is a vote against the 35 years, a vote against the Dilaw, diba? How many, yung kumaga, the vote for BBM is not necessarily a Marcos loyalist vote, but it's a vote to destroy the people who have made us feel small for so many years. And by small, what I mean is yung elitism that for some reason we even accepted. When Cory came into power, what I remember distinctly is the para silang mga artista, wow, the freedom fighters, the heroes, and so on. And it wasn't very long before we started to see the problems that they brought with them. Unang-una, nobody, not even the hardcore yellows, will ever say that it was a perfect Corazon Aquino administration. Bumalik yung mga oligarchs that Marcos had removed. Bumalik lang yung mga tao who had been out of power for so long. Who had to be on the sidelines and who helped fund Cory Aquino's rise to power. So at the start, we had such high hopes, but hindi pa natatapos yung termino ni Cory Aquino when the tide was already turning against them. Masyadong glaring. So, the 7 coup attempts against her are instructive. They inform us that the things that they had promised, they just didn't come about. And not only just did not come about, there was nothing to show for it. Now, yung taong bayan, sanay-sanay na sa infrastructure programs of the Marcoses, nakikita natin yung mga physical evidence of that governance, the CCP, the hospitals, and so on. In the next 6 years of the Cory administration, there was virtually zero infrastructure except for the flyovers. And so began the thinking. As early as that time, people were already thinking, wait, nagkamali yata tayo. But by then, it was difficult and rather late to reverse that. No matter how badly we want to change the leadership at the time, there were just not enough people who were realizing that we were capable of changing them. At masyadong maraming na marginalized na political opinions at that time. And so now, the people who were alive during martial law are still alive and in fact quite active. Those who have seen, for instance, also the excesses of the last 35 years, or even recently, yung mga problema of the recent years, they already understand that the rhetoric that had been fed to us for the past 35 years, well, it doesn't work anymore. So ito yung a vote for BBM is actually a vote for change. In the meantime, oops, sorry. No. I'm going on and on. It is 9:09 in the morning. 9:09 na po ng umaga. Magbabalik tayo after the break.
Balikan natin ang ating mga karambulista at ang programa Karambola sa DWIZ.
Karambola.
Nagbabalik ang Karambola, kasama pa rin kayong lahat nanonood sa akin. Papasalamat ako dun sa mga sumasabaybay sa atin ngayon, even if we're technically on break or in theory on vacation. So gusto ko lang batiin lahat uli ng nanonood sa ating Facebook page and YouTube live streaming. Huwag pong kakalimutan mag-like and share ng itong Karambola live natin ngayon. Especially mag-share kayo sa Twitter para maraming himatayin. So, at tawagan natin for those who are denizens sa social media, para dun sa mga nakikinig sa atin sa radyo. Ang Twitter po kasi ang tawag natin dyan ay pugad ng dilaw. Kasi nagko-congregate po sila doon. However, I would like to point out that I don't know if these studies have been published, but I had been talking to several PR practitioners, and they have conducted their own studies as well, and they were saying that in the Philippines, it's still really Facebook. A lot of people, more people are still on Facebook. Something like 80% are on Facebook, and less than 10% are actually on Twitter and on other sites. Well, less than, kasi over 80%. So it's something like 10+%, 5% or so who are on Twitter and so on. So the better gauge of public opinion are the opinions that you will see on Facebook. The problem is you can't really get a good gauge unless nakikita mo lahat ng ibang mga opinion. Now, let me see. Meron ako nakita magandang comment dito. Sabi ni Carlos Tamaka, sabi ng mga dilaw, credit grabber ang DDS. Yung hindi natapos ni Gloria, pinagpatuloy ni Pinoy. Hindi natapos, tinapos ni Duterte. Sino ngayon ang inutil? I wouldn't put it quite so, but I agree na No, the one thing also that we learned in the Duterte administration, aside from breaking previous misconceptions and showing us that there's a whole different side in politics and that we are capable of coexisting with different opinions. Kahit yung opinion na yun ay hindi talaga kayang sikmurain ng mga tao na naniniwala pa rin dun sa yellow rhetoric. The Duterte years were a period of great change. Not just in the build, which is of course the physical evidence of Duterte's governance, di ba? But also in our own attitudes, in our own mindsets. A lot of people are saying na, dati bilib na bilib ako dito sa EDSA, bilib na bilib ako ngayon. Now, nagbago yung perspective. Nagbago na yung paningin natin. Can you imagine na in all of those years of what we would like to refer to sometimes as yellow governance, tinatanggap natin na ang kinakausap tayo ng mga politiko natin na hoy pa naman kayo, di ba? Or even if they didn't actually say it before Noy said it, we were already feeling it. Yung people who were saying na huwag kayong sumali dito sa diskusyon na to, or hindi niyo kasi naiintindihan ganito kasi yung gobyerno, hindi niyo naiintindihan. Basta ito na yun. Ito na yung batas. It's for your own good. Parang that's the feeling that I got in so many years of governance. Parang, wag niyong pakialaman to, wala kayong pakialam dito, mas alam namin ito. And so, makikita natin, para sa akin kasi, ang tinitignan ko ng masinsinan, kumbaga, I would look very closely at the public school system. Kasi yan ang makikita ninyo. Sa 1987 Constitution na ang primary budget, ang first and biggest budget should always be education. Except the Supreme Court said pwede yung debt servicing. Pero after that, it is always education first. Sorry, excuse me. In spite of the budget, the large budget, or supposedly the primary consideration for education, bakit parang substandard pa rin ang education sa public school system? Well, not anymore, not in the recent years kasi nga tinaasan yung sweldo ng school teachers and all that. Tumataas na yung antas. But during those post-EDSA years, one would think na part of the neoliberal ideology is supposedly to help raise the level of awareness and education of everybody. An informed citizenry will make for good governance. Pag matatalino yung mga botante, matatalino din yung magiging leaders. Kung maayos ang kung the more we are capable of choosing better candidates kapag educated ang ating citizenry. But I always got the feeling na sinasabi nila sa atin na, itong dilapidated structure na ito, itong ilang oras lang kayo tinuturuan ng mga teachers, itong napakababang sweldo ng mga teachers. This tells us just how much they cared about us citizens. Yung hindi ka man lang makapag-provide ng maayos na eskwelahan, wala kayo talagang laganap ng mga feeding programs. Walang priority na taasan ang antas ng diskusyon. That was the tip-off for me. So, pag tinignan ninyo yon, and then you move on to other things, na mas pinahahalagahan pa ng ilang mga opisyal natin ang PR kesa dun sa actual work. So you will have politicians there who are all hot air, tapos akala ng mga tao, yung bait-bait nitong taong to, pero wala actually na nagawa. Produkto yan ng mga panahon na yon. Kasi appearances were enough for them. Yun lang naman ang bibigay nila sa atin, the appearance of a good politician, but without delivering the service. So, sunod-sunod na makikita nyo na yun. They did not give us good and quality education. Hell, they can't even give us good books. They can't even give us good school buildings. Fortunately, the one thing that has changed is that our public school teachers are getting better and better as the years go by, given the better salaries, the better benefits, and so on. It's not perfect, but our teachers are getting smarter. They're getting more talented. But we're not there yet. Kulang pa. And the fact that we have such short hours, such how do you call this? Such substandard equipment and so on before, it's going to take a while to bring yung level of awareness and discussions and all that to our citizenry to the point that kayanin natin yung governance. Kumbaga, there's certain, we have to be smarter. And there's some people who are determined not to make us smarter. And they were leading the country for so long. So, sabi ni Ma'am Cristina Villanueva. And I agree with this. Sabi niya, I agree with BBM when he replied to a question posted to him, how do you intend to solve poverty? And BBM said, through education. Yes. This is something that we have known. In fact, the Philippines had a policy of this since World War II. But nobody has actually brought it to us. The fact that our public schools were left to their own devices for so long. Ang laki ng budget pero ang liit ng returns. And that was either ignored or actively, made that way by the past 35 years. Tells us that we cannot let that kind of governance come back. Hindi na pwede. Kaya nga marami sa atin na ang concern, si Boss Jonat, di ba? His party list is primarily concerned about education. Kasi yun talaga ang sagot. Yun talaga, we will demand better leaders once we are better educated. And this is a shameless plug, but that's also what we do in Luminous and here in Karambola. We can't, fill in the gaps of your elementary or high school years or the elementary or high school years of other people, but we can give some clarity to certain public issues. Yung awareness na yun, hinahabol natin at this late date. But, so that the discussion is raised to a better level. So that hindi na tayo pwedeng sabihan na huwag niyong pakialaman to, hindi niya naman naiintindihan to. Never again should we as a citizenry accept that kind of attitude from our politicians. So, wag na natin papayagan ang liderato natin na sabihin na hindi niya naman naiintindihan eh. And then not bother to explain to us. Yung mga ramdam na ramdam yan for a long time. At hindi na dapat natin papayagan yan. Sabi ni Lenel Alfar, my mother was a public school teacher and she told me, mas napatuunan ng pansin ang teachers only during PRRD's time. Thank you, Ma'am Lenel. And please say hi to your mother. Tell her I agree with her opinion. Sabi ni Antonio Atilio, PRRD has raised the bar of governance. That is true. Sabi ni Airboss Bewell, meron daw pong nagawa yung isang presidential candidate, pinagandaman nila Zoo. I don't even know if I agree with zoos anymore, di ba? Nagbago na nga yung pagtingin natin. The animals really shouldn't be taken out of the wild where they belong unless our purpose is to increase their population. Puro siya isabong. Paano walang school dito, sabi ni Gonzales Piwi. I'm not sure who you're talking about, but please clarify. We'll read it again. Ito, sabi ni Jose Rosal, those survey firms are just using BBM to condition the minds of people that the senatorial candidates at the top ranks are the people's choice because BBM is number one. So kumbaga, what you're saying is that itong survey firms, yung credibility nila is through the presidential survey, pero yung talagang hanap buhay is dun sa senatorial. That's an excellent observation, I think. Thank you kay Sir Roel Costello for yung super chat natin. Magandang umaga sa inyo. So, sabi ni, asan na ba yan? May nagsasabi na kagagawan daw ng mainstream media yung so many years of bad governance. Okay. I don't think that that's why I welcome a presidency that will bring us more nuanced discussions. No? I don't think it's solely MSM, mainstream media, but certainly game changer on social media. The problem was, I think, our expectations. Dati, akala natin ang mainstream nagde-deliver talaga ng balita, nagde-deliver ng mahalagang balita. And to some extent, that was true. It still is. Pero hindi naman silang dinideliver sa atin. But what we were not told was that these mainstream media also had yung sarili-sarili nilang killing. Most people thought for a long time, because this was established in the 50s, that the news was delivered in an objective manner, and that primarily it was objective. What we could not see were the stories they did not tell us. Yung mga behind the scenes, yung mga tales of corruption and greed that, were either not popular or did not conform to particular editorial narratives. Yun ang hindi nila nagturo sa atin. That all forms of publication, except possibly a dictionary, ay merong killing. And that we have to be educated enough to be able to separate the fact from the opinion. Dati kasi hindi maliwanag yun. Furthermore, dahil nga hindi ganun ka-sophisticated yung pagtuturo sa atin ng appreciation ng ating governance, we need commentarists to explain certain things to us. But those explanations, meron din sarili-sariling killing yan. So, they will choose, like in any educational system, di ba? May thesis proposal ka. You have this thesis. For example, my thesis is that the past 30 years have been elitist governance. So, you present your evidence. Ito yung ebidensya ko, so. Well, unless it is tested by somebody asking you questions and taking apart your research, hindi makikita yung mga weaknesses ng argumento na yon. Same with MSM. It was very rare that the commentarists would take apart the news unless it suited a particular agenda. What we were not taught is how to appreciate that that's how things are. And is that my cat? Belial. No, Ahmed Scott. Hang on. 2 minutes, Belial. Okay. What we did not appreciate was that these are the things. This is how it works. We can still read the news, but we also have to understand the editorial policy behind that. Kailangan iniintindi natin na hindi lahat ng ibibigay sa atin, whether it is mainstream or social media, hindi lahat yan ay pure facts. Sometimes it is explained to us in a way for us to take a particular side. It's how information is exchanged among us. We accept that, but we also have to learn how to take it apart. Okay. Hindi necessarily kailangan i-demonize. Halimbawa, yung mga tao na meron silang particular na killing, kailangan lang natin i-recognize na, ito yung killing ninyo. You can't persuade me to your way of thinking, but I would gladly take your facts. Your facts are facts. Sabi ni Serafin Estevanes, is it true that after FEM administration, DepEd becomes the most corrupt department of the government kaya bumaba ang quality ng education sa Pilipinas? I don't think that the decrease in educational quality was primarily just corruption. It's an easy explanation and sweeping. It's more complicated than that. Part of that is also so many administrations weren't really interested in making us less ignorant. Wala sa interest nila itaasan talaga ang antas. So, kapabayaan, isang factor din po yan. Or an actual policy na huwag niyo naman maggawing masyadong matalino yung taong bayan. Mamaya niyan, tanggalin tayo sa pwesto kasi ang tatalino na nila. Diba? O kaya mamaya may mag-challenge ng talino natin kasi natuto na sila eh. Hindi na tayo elect na mga congressman and so on. Sabi ni Ma'am Ying, Belial is a guy, so he isn't in heat. He's just, begging for attention. I'm not kidding. That cat begs for attention. He'll ignore you for something like 23 hours of the day and then decide na, okay, I'm here now, you have to groom me, you have to pet me, you have to make me lambing. Why he's doing that now, ewan ko, first time ito na nagla-live ako na nagparamdam itong pusang ko. My cat is quieter. So, eto, sabi ni Chang, PRRD is the only president who communicates and updates Filipinos as to where our money is being spent. Hope the next president will follow through. Yes, I agree. Tokyo Nexus says, ano po masasabi ninyo sa stop service ng Facebook at Google sa Russia? I think I have to check. I haven't read up on it, so it's not fair to impose an opinion out of sheer ignorance. Ito, sabi ni Lazaro Duran, only the ignorant can afford certainty. Siya din ang makulit. Ooh, I like that. Sabi ni Get Real, during Dilawan admin, inalis benefits namin mga government employees. Need daw kasi ng savings. Binuking PRRD na kalokohan nito na dapat ginamit ang mga savings para sa infrastructure and benefits. I agree. I remember, whether you like her or not, during the time that Gloria Arroyo was president, natanggal yung something like a Christmas bonus or something, ginawa na lang incentive allowance na 7,000 pesos. So, it had its benefits. Sabi ni Hazel Eyes, fake news is cheap to produce, genuine journalism is expensive. Yeah. Para dun sa nagtatanong, Emmanuel Tan says, how tight is the security of BBM and Sara? And I've seen the campaign that people can easily get close to BBM and Sara. Too dangerous. God forbid opposition might do desperate measures. All right. Security is a touchy issue. It's not something that we really should... it's a touchy issue, and I understand that, yes, you're very, very concerned. Now, Sara's security is the PSG, because she's the daughter of the president. And maybe she's supplemented. And I understand that BBM has his own. And I think I will trust the management team, the unit team campaign management team to evaluate and to evaluate the concerns and the security measures. So what I will do is I'll bring it to their attention that people are asking how tight or how good the security is, but also understand that this is campaign. So we cannot also hobble our candidates. Hindi natin pwedeng anahin yung mga kandidato natin, patigilin yung mga kandidato natin with certain certain yung restrictions, because BBM has always waded into the crowd, so has Inday, and while we are very, very concerned about their safety, they have several interests to balance. One is that the people have to feel their presence, and because there will be those who will not understand why they're being kept away. And second, balancing, of course, their own personal safety and security. So what we'll do is that we'll bring it to the attention of their management team and let them make the decisions or assessments on their end. But thank you for giving us that observation. We're not the only one, but it's really, maybe it's time that we address all of these concerns as well. So we'll just deliver it to the UNI team and let's see what they'll do after their evaluation. Magbabalik ang Karambola. Ang oras natin is 9:34 ng umaga.
Balikan natin ang ating mga karambulista at ang programa Karambola sa DWIZ.
Karambola, Karambola, tuwing umaga.
Nagbabalik ang Karambola. Wala pa rin ako kasama. Akala ko dadating si Boss John natin. But sige, ako po si Trixie Cruz Angeles. Thank you, Boss. Sabi ni Jonathan Castillo, liberals have an aversion to infrastructure and more on social services. Ninoy once said, makakain bang infrastructure na yan? Their policy on delivering social services borders on mendicancy so that the masses will depend on the scraps that the powers would give them. Besides, mas madaling nakawin ng pera mula sa social services. An excellent observation, Mr. Castillo. But let's also add certain things, no? Para mas malawak yung appreciation natin na ito. It's not just the neoliberals. Well, of course, Gloria Arroyo would fall into that. She also said once na, makakain ba yung kultura na yan? The failing to recognize that food is also culture, diba? The cultivation of rice, traditional methods, and so on, is part of culture. In fact, culture is the expression of a people, collective expression. And so even now, even the way we dress right now, that's all culture. Everything is actually culture. So she has since regretted that statement, and I'm glad about that. But you're right. Makakain ba ang infrastructure na yan? Yung kapabayaan ng ilang taon na infrastructure program, particularly with the Noy administration, kasi ang sinasabi nila is a remnant of the fight against the Marcos dictatorship, quote unquote. Kasi naniwala sila sa sarili nilang kampanya noon. Nung nilalabanan si Marcos, parating sinasabi, ginagawa nilang example yung CCP, yung folk arts, as examples of the excesses daw of the administration ng Manila Film Center and so on. Siyempre, hindi nila masyadong binabanggit yung heart center, yung kidney center, lung center, and all of that. Or if they ever mention those, sinasabi nila, empty naman yun, wala namang laman, wala naman, building lang ang pinagawa, pero wala namang laman. And on these days of all days, in the middle of our pandemic, we do appreciate these hospitals so much. But that was yun ang sinasabi natin is that there are things like the campaign rhetoric of the past years that still they trickle down and we fail to recognize them as such. And that is the sin of Noynoy Aquino, failing to recognize na bahagi ng campaign rhetoric dun sa kampanya ng nanay niya laban kay Ferdinand Marcos, itong makakain ba yung infrastructure na yan? Kasi yun ang sinasabi nila, makakain ba yung folk arts theater na yan? Makakain ba yung CCP? Anong maitutulong yan sa taong bayan? Failing to realize that an education that is rich in culture, in history, in our art, teaches people to be creative, and that creativity will find expression even in business, in teaching, in whatever profession you're in. The creativity is a talent. It gives us depth of reasoning and thinking. Holy cow, I do not understand kung bakit ganun yung attitude nila sa atin. So, sabi ni Edwin Osa, well, an ignorant society will keep the liberals in power. Exactly. Exactly. And without telling us, punong-puno ng rhetoric na ang galing-galing namin. Kasi nilalabanan namin ng korupsyon, nilalabanan namin diktadurya, nilalabanan namin yung mga remnants ng mga Marcos years and so on. Which is really, kumbaga, an indication of how uncreative they have become. An indication that they lack now the depth of thinking that we used to have because there was so much emphasis on history, on culture, on the arts. They fail to realize na pag sinabi ninyong nakakain ba yung art na yan, yes, nakakain po yan. Because it teaches us how to think. It's like learning math. It teaches us how to think. It creates neural pathways that help us think better. Come up with more creative ways of solving problems. So weird talaga that, and it is, can you imagine, it is this Promdi guy from Davao who comes up and wrecks that entire neoliberalist attitude that of condescension that says that these elites that we actually put into power are not better than us. Diba? Meron tayong culture sa Amerika, sabi ni Christian Villarasa, sa sobrang diversity, nawawala yung identity nila. Parang Irish ang malakas sa kanila, mafia, etc. Well, cultural identity po kasi yan. And that's in fact part of why there was so much emphasis on culture and the arts, particularly on history. Yung history, yun yung nagbabind sa atin together. This is the thesis, no? The prevailing theory is that the people who are well aware of their past get to participate indirectly in that past. Pagka dumadaan tayo sa cathartic situations like something severe, a war, yung common experience is what helps us identify with each other. At yung identity na yon, that create, yung kumbaga, yung common experience yan, nagbabond kayo. Parang the closest thing that I can think of is parang initiation. Lahat kayo dumadaan sa initiation. So even if nag-initiation ka 20 years before the batch that was initiated after you have some common experience that binds you together and you identify with each other. The teaching of history allows us to participate in that cathartic experience like yung gera and all that. Pag pinag-aaralan natin yan, nagiging bahagi tayo ng experience na yon and we can now relate to each other. Yung mga ganyan. So, the Marcos years recognize that. Ferdinand Marcos in particular recognized that. I'm not saying he was perfect, but there's at least that. Meron ganun. Kasi in the later years, nawala eh. Kukunti yung emphasis on culture and arts. In fact, to the point that there was a time when people were actually saying, pang mayaman lang yung culture and arts. Of course not. Because we need people to learn how to be creative. It's part of a different thinking process. Pero, yun, that was one thing that this Promdi president was able to tear down. He could talk history, Balangiga, yung Buddhato massacre, and so on. He easily would put this into conversations, giving us an informal education on the appreciation of our foreign relations with the U.S. But that it comes with a backdrop of this. Ito pa. So ito yung nakaka-miss if we don't ensure a continuity. Sabi ni Ate Liz Vilags, aside from human behavior, culture has an effect on emotions, memory, and decision-making. Correct. Attorney, talaga ba, sabi ni Antonio Panilagaw, talaga ba ang mga Marcoses, marami siyang mga projects, pero grabe rin siya ma-plunder sa Pinas? I think that, kumbaga, we've heard one side of the story. It's time for us to see the other side. Hindi natin kasi pwede lang sabihin that any person was evil or completely good. We can only treat our historical figures as human beings, which is what they are. We don't make them gods. We don't want to make them gods kasi hindi natin ma-appreciate yung ginawa nila. Halimbawa si Rizal. He had his feelings. He had his own, but we never study them. We study which is why I like it sometimes when Ambet Ocampo he posted a picture of yung ang gulo-gulo nila, si Antonio Luna, si Rizal, parang inaano niya, ginugulpi niya si Luna, and they're all laughing on the floor. Diba? It shows that our heroes aren't walking two-dimensional beings. They had faults. They made mistakes. And yet, in spite of their human failings, they came up with these things that have enlightened us. It's that's what I'm anticipating in the new administration. Tatanggalin na sa atin yung two-dimensional appreciation. Now, this person is absolutely good, that this person is absolutely bad. Ferdinand Marcos made his mistakes, had his own failings. I'm not saying that he wasn't corrupt, but he got things done. So we're going to have to balance our appreciation of our leaders and our, historical figures with the fact that, first of all, tao sila. So bilang tao, nagkakamali din sila. Tanggapin din natin na magkakamali rin yung mga leaders natin. And they're not going to be perfect. But what we want is for them to get things done. Mababa na nga yung natin yung standards natin Ito, sabi ni Algo, I hope you can discuss homeless issues, street dwellers, and should additional local sociologists, psychologists step in and build strong dwellings with architects. Okay. Homelessness is, well, I don't think that we will, in the remaining time, be able to make an in-depth discussion on homelessness and how we're going to address it. We don't even know yet exactly all the reasons for these homelessness. Well, in a country that has so few resources devoted to housing, and that the policies are still imperfect as they are, I'm not sure I can make an in-depth discussion in the remaining 10 minutes that we have. So what we'll do is we'll set this aside for one of the lives sa Luminous. Strong dwellings, but let's concentrate on the term strong dwellings. Naiintindihan ko yan. Meron kasing, ang sinasabi ni Algo kasi, yes, we have noticed, pinag-aralan natin ang urban poor. Dito sa ating urban poor, mapapansin niyo marami barong-barong yung bahay. Pero pag pumasok kayo, yung mga gadgets o kaya yung TV nila magaganda. So, ang sinasabi ng mga sociologists is that these things kasi they can invest in kasi hindi certain yung kanilang ownership ng lupa. Dahil hindi certain yung ownership ng lupa nila, alam nila posibleng mapaalis sila at any time. And so they will not invest in making a nice house. They will invest in things that they can carry and take away. But if you give them or if they're capable of buying the house and the lot that it stands on, and you give them certainty, aayusin nila yung bahay nila. And they will invest in things that last. So, yes, this affects the urban poor and it affects them a lot. But on the other hand, the housing that is available is usually in areas that are far from where their livelihoods are. And so we have to balance those two interests. Yun pa lang in a nutshell ang kaya natin i-discuss sa ngayon. But you're right to point it out. Sabi ni Eden Ruta, those who write history portray themselves as the victors. Tagal sa pedestal ni Aguinaldo, nasira lang siya sa General Luna. Excuse me, hindi po siya doon nasira. Nasira siya when he ran for president. At doon nilabas ni Quezon, and he characterized the murder, the execution, not murder, of Bonifacio as something that Aguinaldo should take the blame for forever. Pero ito yung sinasabi ko nga sa inyo we have to make evaluations based on first the fact that these people are human, and second, what were the conditions at the time. Hindi natin pwedeng i-decide na villain sa Aguinaldo based on our own 21st century ideals. Aguinaldo was operating under wartime conditions. At dito, in any wartime situation, in the battlefield, you shoot a traitor. Okay? So until we learn to accept that there are factors that are not real to us at this present time, I don't think it would be fair for us to pass any kind of moral judgment on our heroes because we didn't live during those times. Sabi ni Mama Marites Fernando, that's what Dr. Carlos says. The narrative should be balanced. President Marcos's term wasn't just about martial law. Agriculture, infra, and foreign policy should be taken into consideration as well. Yes. But, if I said it, you wouldn't believe me. So you have to bring in Dr. Clarita as the expert to redefine what you're already hearing here. I'm kidding. We love Dr. Carlos. Sabi ni Christian Moralde, Attorney Fix, while you're explaining about culture and history, I'm still somehow trying to grasp its relevance. I guess this is the result of what they did to us. Crap. Exactly. Do you know one of the first things that Cory Aquino did when she became president was issue Executive Order number 1, which was so sweeping. But one of the results of that executive order was to take away the tax privileges of the CCP. And it never went back. Nobody ever thought to put it back. Very few people appreciate the kind of thinking that a creative mind can do for us. And for me, that is the failing of the past 30 years. Sabi ni Ma'am John, ayan. Okay na? May audio ba ako? Alright. So, sabi ni Ma'am June, true po, in Tondo there are houses that are almost giba-giba from the outside but complete ang appliances sa loob. There you go, di ba? So sabi ni Gabriel Cristobal, and all of those so-called heroes were also very youthful compared to the politicians we see in this era. So, Ampaunes, sabi ni Christian Villarasa, Ampaunes left the group. Sabi ni Ma'am Cecilia Chongson, super late ako. Nakita ko itong live kasi na-post ng DWIZ 8 a.m. Pasensya na po. Because we're technically on vacation. Nalilate ako. Nagigising ako alas 8 na. Pasensya na po. I will try to be earlier tomorrow. Sabi ni Get Real, it's not only our belly that needs sustenance but also our brain and our souls. That is correct. Thank you. Ito sabi ni Ma'am Joan, folk arts theater was created to give access to the common tao. Please don't use that. Common tao and the masses and all that are terms used to refer to us who weren't them. So, to the public, ganun. To watch stage plays, it was open to the public, free entrance, no air conditioner kasi presko ang hangin from the sea. Ang pinagtayuan, sabi ni Rico Landayan, ba ng CCP at mga nakaligid na istruktura, alam ba ng marami na iyan ay dagat? Oo nga it was the first. At the time, hindi pa kasi considered environmentally dangerous or environmentally destructive ang reclamation, ang land reclamation. Ngayon, iba na yung attitude natin. But you're right. Out of the sea, the CCP and the folk arts in the Manila and the film center rose out of the waves. Diba? They were able to do it. Sabi ni Ma'am Jennifer Ichikawa, I like this. Bakit? Puro kain na lang ba ang gagawin ng mga tao sa buong buhay nila? I agree. And yun na nga and ito yung failing ni Noynoy. He never got out of that rhetoric, of the 1986 rhetoric. Pag ginugutom ang mga tao, tapos bibigyan ninyo ng folk arts theater, those are apples and oranges, diba? They forget the feeding programs and all that. And maybe yes. But that wasn't Mrs. Marcos's job. It was the DSWD or what passed as social work during those times. It was agriculture, it was all of that. The fact that she concentrated on one particular thing shouldn't be taken against her because lahat naman kailangan tuunan natin ng pansin. Pero she wasn't stealing from poor people to put it into this info. At least I have not seen evidence of that. So, I think na dapat na-appreciate natin what has been done. Sige, there were failings. O sige, there were mistakes, there were policies. Let's say Ferdinand Marcos didn't have as strong a grasp on the military as he had said he did. And a lot of human rights violations were in fact committed. That doesn't take away from the fact that he tore down the oligarchy, exposed them for the ways in which they kept trying to enrich themselves at government expense. Well, it doesn't take that away, the importance of the things that actually had been done. Ito, sabi ni Lady Pang, having worked in a museum made me appreciate the works of Madame Imelda. Unfortunately, it was Ramos' time na, so was not able to enjoy its existence that much. Lalo at yellow ang Ayala Foundation. Yes. Sabi ni Marites Fernando, kasi they consider themselves as if hindi sila nagkakamali at yung admin and others lang laging mali. We have had enough of them and their narratives. Yes, and that we have to break away from the things that they kept trying to drill into our heads. Halimbawa, the fact that we have to demand perfection from government officials in order to appreciate them, that's screwed up. We judge history based on a lot of factors. What did this person do? What did this person not do? Pagka pinapasukan na natin yun na may personal na tayo, iba na yun. A person who, it takes away, sinasabi nila, Kristiyano sila, di ba? But it takes away from the very real concept of redemption. A person may have sinned, but that doesn't mean he's useless na as a person. And in fact, could have learned from that sin, could have learned from being punished for that. The absolutes that we demand is a narrative, is a yellow narrative. Para sa kanila, kailangan black and white lang. Tapos sila yung white, tayo yung Pag hindi ka agree sa kanila, tayo yung black. So it's time to break away from that. And that's why we should welcome an administration that understands redemption. That understands that we judge people based both on their accomplishments as well as on their failings. And on that note, maraming salamat sa pagsubaybay sa Karambola nitong araw na ito. We'll be back tomorrow. And magtatambayan din po siguro kami ni Attorney Mohamed mamayang 12 o'clock. We'll see you then. Antabayanan ang susunod na programa ang Serbisyong Lubos sa 882 with Sir Victor Leon Dimas. Yun, tambayan.
Oh! Karambola.
Sumainyo ang programang Karambola sa TWIZ. Hanggang sa muli, tayo'y magbabalik upang ihatid ang pagtalakay sa iba't ibang mga issue dito pa rin sa programang Karambola sa TWIZ.